This is a really embarrassing thing that she does.
Go ahead.
If she starts to speak to someone who has an accent, she'll just start doing the accent.
With her picture-perfect marriage, successful job, and loving family, Meryl Streep appeared untouchable for decades. Everything changed in February 2025. Her daughter filed paperwork that exposed fissures that no one knew existed, revealing a family secret. During the same week, film footage of Meryl Streep at a big event went viral for the wrong reasons. The perfect woman was suddenly the center of attention she had never desired. The actress Meryl Streep came into this world in Summit, New Jersey on June 22, 1949. In addition to being a commercial artist, Mary Wilkinson Streep's father, Harry William Streep Jr., was a pharmaceutical executive at Merck. She grew up in a home where her mother was free to let her imagination run wild and her father was a stickler for routine and routine labor. Meryl came from a household where everyone was expected to do their part, even if it meant letting their imagination run wild. Meryl inherited her mother's enthusiasm for the arts from a young age, as she too painted and created. In Basking Ridge, where values like culture and education were paramount, the family eventually settled down. She didn't fully comprehend the impact that decision had on her until much later. Having a career in Hollywood wasn't always in Meryl's plans when she was a child. She thought she was gawky, had frizzy hair and oversized spectacles. However, she delighted in performing mini-shows for the camera. She started off by performing in her family's home movies. She would imitate various voices, characters, dialects, and even strange facial expressions in an effort to make her siblings giggle. Training, not recreation, was the goal here. Unbeknownst to her at the time, these outrageous performances were honing a talent that would ultimately allow her to mesmerize audiences everywhere. The abundance of literature, the frequent playing of music, and the freedom to explore were all ways in which her parents encouraged her natural curiosity. She had an innate need to perform as a result of her independence. The renowned voice teacher Estelle Liebling began her opera training with her when she was 12 years old. Legobling didn't take on any old person, so this was quite an event. After 4 years of training, Meryl learnt the ropes of opera but never developed a genuine affinity for the art form. She became emotionally detached from the music and lyrics and eventually left. The focus was on being truthful, not on failing. She didn't like for opera. Nonetheless, she gained control of her voice and other skills that would serve her well in her acting career as a result of her training. As a senior in high school, Meryl had graduated from the awkward kid label. In her final year of high school, she became homecoming queen, entered the school play, and joined the cheerleading squad. People seemed to be drawn to her infectious enthusiasm, which surprised even her. She had never considered herself attractive or popular. In school plays, she was fearless, charismatic, and, most importantly, she loved herself. During her adolescence, she began to view acting as more than just a pastime. She attended Vassar College to major in theater and costume design after finishing high school. However, the acting career route didn't seem obvious. Despite her best efforts, she failed to get enough sleep the night before her law school interview. The subject of law was immediately removed. She was immediately drawn to the Yale School of Drama after that. Despite the seeming inadvertence, it had a profound impact. She jumped headfirst into theater while at Yale, starring in Miss Julie. Due to the extreme intensity of the performance, some spectators even believed a bird had been sacrificed on stage. Meryl found out her acting chops on her own, according to her professor. No one ever truly taught her. In 1975, she went straight to New York City after getting her master's degree. Due to a delayed train, she was 30 minutes late to her audition with the renowned Joseph Papp. Despite his initial annoyance, he eventually warmed up to her performance. Suddenly, she was cast in Trelawney of the Wells, her Broadway debut. Starring John Lithgow, Mandy Patinkin, and others, the drama premiered at the Vivian Beaumont Theatre. It all started with that one audition. Pap continued employing her because he could see she had something special. After starring in a double bill in 1976 as a raucous, untamed Southern lady and a tight, icy New York secretary, she received a Tony Award nomination. She altered her breathing pattern in addition to her voice and posture. Audience members failed to recognize the actress. Critics took note of her versatility that one night. Soon, her name began to stick in people's minds. Meryl Streep didn't enter Hollywood stealthily. Rather, she did so with a whirlwind of uncertainty, sorrow, and genius. In 1977, with Julia, she made her big screen debut. She was illuminated in silhouette, wore an ill-fitting wig, and believed the entire event had been a catastrophe. She hardly spoke in the brief flashback sequence. Leaving the film industry was a real possibility. Jane Fonda was the one who swayed her decision. Fonda was really kind, taught her the ropes, and showed her the potential. She felt motivated to continue after that peak. Her breakout performance in The Deer Hunter came only a year after that. She brought the character of Linda to life, a strong lady who calmly maintained her world even while the men in her life were disintegrating. She received an Oscar nomination for a performance that was both forceful and understated. At the tender age of 29, she found herself starring in a blockbuster opposite Robert De Niro and Christopher Walken. With 5 Academy Awards to its name, the picture earned approximately $49 million domestically. Even while she was climbing the corporate ladder, her private life was falling apart. In 1976, Meryl Streep had just graduated from Yale at the age of 27. It was in Central Park when she met John Cazale, a shy, passionate man 14 years her older, after landing a role in a Shakespearean play. He was well known for his intense, concentrated labor and had a lengthy history of performing on stage. After only a few days of practice, they couldn't be separated. They had already moved in together by the time the show concluded 8 weeks later. They centered their lives around their new Tribeca loft. Even before he became a cinematic star, Cazale had established himself as more than just a stage performer. The Godfather and its sequel featured him as Fredo. He also starred in The Deer Hunter, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Conversation. Best Picture nominations and wins came to every picture he worked on. The filmmakers adored him because of his subtle yet impactful performances. Al Pacino referred to him as his acting collaborator. His eyes had an unfake melancholy, according to Sidney Lumet. Even though he avoided seeking it out, fame eventually found him. She was still establishing her reputation when Streep became a part of his life. Curiosity was piqued by the distinction. May 1977 was the turning point. Cazale began doing the unthinkable, skipping performances during Agamemnon rehearsals. Joseph Papp had him evaluated. The news was devastating. The disease had spread to the lungs and was deadly. They informed him his time was limited. Streep was taken aback. She had just begun to land larger roles. Now her entire existence was focused on one objective: sitting with him throughout treatments, holding his hand through the pain, and rearranging her entire schedule to remain close were all things she set aside. She did it on her own initiative, without prompting. She worked jobs she hated not for the glory or her own benefit, but to cover the costs of his medical care. The role that saved her life was a TV miniseries part that paid $5,000 each episode. Private nurses and hospital expenses were paid for with that sum. According to her friends, she declined huge stage jobs so she could remain in New York. On good days, terrible days, and the long trek home, she wished she could be there. She couldn't help but think of them in their loft whenever she was on set. He remained a constant in her mind. The final day was March 3, 1978. The decline in his health was rapid. In their peaceful chamber adorned with books and ancient inscriptions, Cazale's respiration came to a complete stop at 2:45 a.m. In her terror, Meryl Streep clutched him, sobbed, and pleaded with him until, for an impossibility, he blinked, met her gaze, and spoke, "It's all right, Meryl." Then he vanished. The age difference between them was 42 and 29 years. He spoke those final words, and no screenwriter could have done a greater job. In March 1978, Meryl Streep's soulmate passed away. She was devastated by the loss. Their New York City penthouse had been shared, and now she was abruptly homeless, distraught, and mourning. Even she was on the cusp of stardom in Hollywood. In the same year that she was nominated for an Oscar for The Deer Hunter, she also won an Emmy for Holocaust. She felt trapped in both roles, and her grief was intertwined with them. Don Gummer is a sculptor whom her brother Harry brought to her attention. Thoughtful, calm, and compassionate, he was. He extended an offer of his Soho flat to her on his motorbike tour of Pakistan. Although he was away, she stayed put. Day after day, they began exchanging letters. Don had an injury while on the trip, forcing him to return home early. This was another unfortunate turn of events. At that point, the tide turned. They had been close via correspondence. Now that they lived in the same house, a deeper bond developed. It wasn't showy or spectacular, it was subtle and genuine. Both were still recovering from their injuries, one from a terrible accident and the other from loss. So they spent weeks together sharing meals and moments. Gradually, a fresh start materialized. Intimacy blossomed into romance. Don and Meryl were married only 6 months following John Cazale's passing. Come September 1978, it was. The Connecticut garden of her parents served as the setting for the wedding. The ceremony was small and meaningful, rather than a lavish Hollywood affair. Since Meryl had finally made peace with Don, she couldn't care less if others felt it was moving too quickly. He remained when she needed him most, and she said it was natural. Away from the limelight, Don Gummer had his own successful career. He entered this world in 1946 in Louisville, Kentucky. Sculptor noted for monumental abstract metalwork, he attended Yale University. He had already performed over 30 solo shows, some in New York and others in Japan, when he wed Meryl. Some of the museums that acquired his art were the Evansville Museum and Mass MoCA. Just like the guy himself, his art was understated, but strong. They had a big brood. Henry Wolfe, who was born to them in 1979, went on to have a successful acting and musical career. Mamie, their daughter, was born in 1983. She went on to star on Broadway and in an episode of The Good Wife. Grace, who appeared in Mr. Robot and other series, followed in 1986. The eldest, Louisa, was born in 1991. She attended Yale University and had a starring role in The Gilded Age. Each of the 4 kids found their own path into the creative industries. They formed a talented little dynasty. Don and Meryl kept their private life under wraps for many years. They attended gatherings together, but mostly kept a low profile. Their love appeared unwavering, but in 2023, the truth emerged. They had been secretly living apart since 2017. A discreet split that was only made public after a number of years had passed. No public announcement, no divorce. While Don devoted himself to his sculptures, Meryl was traveling the world for her job. They were nevertheless able to gather for family gatherings while living in various cities. In 2018, they made their final joint appearance at the Oscars. Following that, they maintained silence. Their continued affection was later verified by a representative who added that they were no longer romantically involved. Kramer vs. Kramer, starring Meryl Streep, was a box office smash in December 1979. The film's production budget was a mere $8 million, yet it soared over $173 million. becoming the year's top earner in North America. Joanna Kramer, the character she played, was a difficult mother who abandons her husband and kid before returning to the courtroom to argue for custody. It was simultaneously demanding suppleness and tenacity. Best Supporting Actress was the Oscar she earned in April 1980 at the 52nd annual ceremony. Through her sobs, she expressed her gratitude to Dustin Hoffman and filmmaker Robert Benton. Once she established the standard, critics stopped referring to her as an emerging star. The picture took home 5 Oscars, including hers. Her entry in Hollywood was solidified at that time. After that, in December 1982, Sophie's Choice made its debut. Actress Sophie Zawistowski portrayed a Holocaust survivor in post-war Brooklyn who kept secrets from the outside world. It was catastrophic, not sad. Streep insisted on having the flashbacks shot in Polish and German because she wanted the reality, not a translation. The choice made the on-screen suffering worse. Rather of merely praising her, critics knelt down. She had an outstanding performance, according to Roger Ebert. She received her second Academy Award in as many years on April 11, 1983, for Best Actress. Her status was no longer contested. Not only did Streep win, but she merged so fully with Sophie that the audience forgot they were seeing a play, putting her in the company of legendary actresses like Hepburn and Bergman. But it was before the 1990s. Acting opportunities dried up after Out of Africa and Ironweed, not because she was unsuccessful, but because Hollywood stopped contacting her. Studios began to view her as a star beyond the age of 40. By 1994, her presence on movie office charts had largely faded. Her plays, such as One True Thing and Marvin's Room, were criticized for being sentimental and unremarkable. She began to question whether she should just leave. She felt her self-esteem plummet, and she eventually spoke clean about her belief that her career was ended. Suddenly, in June 1995, The Bridges of Madison County was released to theaters, and everything changed. It raked in almost $71 million globally, despite its subtlety, slowness, and quietness. Surprisingly, her work was far from finished. Frenchie Johnson, a rural Iowa housewife, falls for Clint Eastwood's character during their illicit 4-day affair, and she performed the role brilliantly. It was effective because, to the chemistry, the pain, and the quiet. Nominations from the Screen Actors Guild and the Golden Globes were bestowed to her. Moreover, it demonstrated that she remained influential. According to her biographers, this picture re-established her career, and she had an easier time landing jobs after that. The door had been pried open by Streep. It wasn't until 2006's The Devil Wears Prada that things really took off. Becoming a cultural monument was not its intended outcome. In her role as the icy dictatorial magazine editor Miranda Priestley, Meryl Streep dominated the screen. She said softly, just above a whisper. She merely dismissed, rather than stormed. Clint Eastwood's soothing voice served as her inspiration. The result was satisfactory. The film's $35 million budget brought in $326 million. Everyone, from critics to audiences, went wild. She broke the Golden Globe record and received her 14th nomination for the Oscar. Meryl Streep became famous overnight, even among younger audiences who had never watched Sophie's Choice. In July of 2008, she released Mamma Mia, a record that deviated from her usual style, together with the warm rays of summer and the music of ABBA. The Dark Knight had a higher opening weekend total of $27.6 million, but this one kept on giving. Topping the box office for live-action musicals at the time, it earned over $611 million worldwide. It made more than £69 million in the UK. The singing was called into question by some, but her charisma was undeniable. The film's success was due in large part to her infectious enthusiasm. After 10 years, fans finally got their wish for a sequel. The Iron Lady, her 2011 return to serious ground, shocked everyone but failed to impress the public. She studied Margaret Thatcher's voice, motions, and silences in great detail for her depiction. She won the Oscar for Best Actress in February 2012 for it. She defied all industry biases by winning for the first time at the age of 62, after a 29-year absence. Despite its lack of youth and glitz, the picture earned $115 million worldwide. The reviewers praised her performance, and she ended up with 2 awards, the Golden Globe and the BAFTA. She was no longer only surviving in Hollywood, she was becoming the embodiment of survival. In the annals of Hollywood, no one has ever received more nominations than Meryl Streep. By the end of 2023, she had 33 nominations at the Golden Globes, surpassing Shirley MacLaine's 20 and Jack Lemmon's 22, according to Guinness World Records. Her most recent nomination was for her performance in the October 2023 debut of Only Murders in the Building, Season 3. Even more impressive is the fact that she has received 21 Oscar nominations, more than any other actress in history. With 17 nominations for Best Actress and 4 for Best Supporting Actress, she was honored by the Academy on 4 occasions. The Deer Hunter was the first in 1978. Her age was 28. She has been at the top for half a century, receiving nominations in each of the 5 decades beginning in the 1970s and ending in the 2010s. Her 9 competitive Golden Globe triumphs tell the same story. No actor has won more. She made her 1979 debut in Kramer vs. Kramer and went on to star in Sophie's Choice, Julie and Julia, The Iron Lady, and Julie and Julia. She has acted in a wide variety of films, winning accolades for everything from biopics to thrillers, romantic comedies to war tragedies. She cemented her legacy once again in 2016 when she received her 30th nomination for Florence Foster Jenkins. She has been honored with several accolades, including Best Supporting Actress, Best Actress, Comedy and Drama, and 2 Special Achievement Awards, including the esteemed Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2017. Not only in Hollywood, though. The nation's highest civilian honor, bestowed by President Obama in 2014, she was presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He praised her for having lifted up human dignity through her work. In 2010, she was honored with the National Medal of Arts for her impact on American culture via her work in film and theater. This happened 4 years earlier. Along with other greats like Harper Lee and Quincy Jones, she was honored with that title. Gracefully stepping onto the Golden Globe stage in January 2017, Meryl Streep's remarks sent shockwaves throughout the globe. Everybody understood who she meant, even if she didn't mention Donald Trump by name. She remembered seeing him make fun of a handicapped reporter during a campaign event. Despite the force, her voice remained unshaken. She proclaimed it the most memorable performance of the year, not because to its quality, but more to the fact that it devastated her. Minutes after, Trump retaliated on Twitter, claiming that she was overrated and that she was a Hillary supporter who lost big. That comment went viral, receiving more than 80,000 retweets in a single day. Some people were happy for her, while others thought she was just a spoiled braggart from Hollywood. In an instant, the stage transformed into a battleground. Months down the road, the Weinstein scandal cracked. Harvey Weinstein's shadowy business started to crumble in December 2017. One of his most vocal accusers, Rose McGowan, took to Twitter to vent her frustrations at Streep. "Your silence is the problem," she said, bringing up Marchesa, the fashion label associated with Weinstein's ex-wife, and accusing her of remaining silent while making fun of the actresses who wore black to the Golden Globes as a protest. Anger, perplexity, and suspicion swept the internet. Did Meryl find out? Is it fair that she remained silent? Silence meant approbation, didn't it? Streep at last spoke up in response. She kept repeating, "I didn't know," in her brief but honest comments to the Huffington Post. She insisted she was never, ever in his hotel room, much alone seen the indicators or been involved in any way. She stated her belief in the ladies and her hatred of what happened to them. However, her statements failed to quell the tempest. Some praised her honesty, while others said she was only trying to protect herself. It seemed like an insignificant gesture for someone with such influence. Then, in February of 2025, at SNL 50, the homecoming concert, an unexpected event arrived. Famous people flocked to Radio City Music Hall, and millions more tuned in live. No warning, no explanation. Just 75-year-old Meryl seated next to Martin Short, middle finger up and proud, as the camera captured Streep flipping the bird in the middle of a comedy homage. A hole appeared in the internet. Even the intended recipient of the gesture was unclear. A lot of people commented, "That's Meryl." Some were angry, some were laughing, and the ratings went through the roof. Both a rebel and a cranky legend without her filter were seen by some. The middle finger, nevertheless, became newsworthy because everyone saw it. The political focus had already been on Meryl Streep long before that move. She made an appearance during the 2016 Democratic National Convention in July. With enthusiasm, she made her case for Hillary Clinton to become the first female president and lauded the achievements of women who had gone before her. Across the arena and into the living rooms of millions, her voice resounded. For her, that was only the latest turning point in a lengthy history of speaking up. Nevertheless, she persisted farther. All 535 senators and representatives in Congress received handwritten letters from her a year ago, in which she pleaded for their support of the Equal Rights Amendment. She was seeking genuine transformation, not just a publicity gimmick. What she really wanted was for them to stand up for their moms, husbands, and daughters. Protest for equality was her straightforward message. With such action, the ERA was able to re-enter the public discourse. Activists felt revitalized once bills were introduced. Beyond performing, she had utilized her popularity for other purposes. Now, in the midst of Hollywood, Meryl Streep and Martin Short secretly lived out an unexpected love tale for more than a year. It all began in January of 2024, as production was underway in New York. The rumors began in February, but by March they were officially dating. They were seen smiling at one another, hanging about after shooting, and secretly having supper at Via Carlo, according to those close to the production. During read-throughs, they would joke and take trips upstate. An insider remembered an incident that occurred in April 2025, when Meryl said, "Don't think these kids can resist my senior discount charm." And Martin responded, "Only if you promise to split it with me." They showed up for the Season 3 premiere in Los Angeles on May 30th, arm in arm, and the audience went absolutely crazy. On January 8, 2025, the fire broke out. Los Angeles was engulfed in flames as 30 mph wind gusts and dense, poisonous air swept over the city. Meryl Streep was unable to comply with the evacuation order for Pacific Palisades because a large tree had fallen on her driveway. Since time was of the essence, she took action. She didn't waste any time and hurriedly borrowed wire cutters from the neighbor. On her hands and knees, she sliced the backyard fence in half. She finally dug out a space large enough to accommodate her SUV 45 minutes after starting. She narrowly escaped a blazing tree branch as she retreated through her neighbor's property.